Howdy, how we doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for joining in.
Of course. I've been trying to join one of these for a little while now. I've been following you guys. I love your work.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, I recognize the name. We might have connected on LinkedIn or somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah. We were talking the other day about the recent conference that y'all host that I ended up missing just by a few days. Really bummed that I missed that. But getting into the space, love what, like I said, love what you guys are doing. Bought your book.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
Definitely inspired. Currently going through your class. So,
Oh, wow. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
yeah.
Um, yeah, give me just a minute and I'm going to pull up actually the book. I want to reference a chapter in there for projective worlds. And we'll see if anybody else trickles in here. But tell me a little more about what you do and where you're calling from.
Yeah. So, currently, San Antonio, Texas. I have a few different hats that I wear. By day, I am a psychiatrist. I'm currently in a sleep medicine training program. So, I'm going to do sleep medicine and psychiatry. And then in my free time, I am currently starting up a company where we are leveraging some of the technology that comes with tabletop role playing games to inject learning objectives into like any game that you're playing. So using ambient AI listening as well as a learning objective downloader, we're hoping to build a software as a service that helps parents like me. And I run tabletops with my kids all the time, but just like find ways to put those learning objectives in for small like formative assessments. So we've been working on that for almost a year, and it's just about ready to start sharing with others. But we're really excited, my co-founder and I, really excited to bring something that is practical for both of us, having kids and wanting to do like more homeschool stuff, but also making tabletop role-playing games a little bit more like you don't have to think of everything when you're implementing or have like a additional like this will support you in bringing those learning objectives to your table.
Remarkable. I would love to uh, explore that a little and learn a little more about how that works. That sounds really, really
Yeah.
remarkable and interesting. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm connecting the dots. I did see your. I remember your group. Is it called Tabletop? No, no. It's called Roundtable.
No, tabletop teaching. Tabletop
Tabletop
teaching.
teaching. Yes.
Yes, we got an LLC in Texas that we've been working out of since April. But yeah, this has been a passion project now for I actually, it was funny because I saw your book. Your book came out maybe like 3 months after we started it, like 2 or 3 months after we started it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that we're all on the same wavelength too, because it was exactly like, it was exactly what I was trying to do too with like, I'm not an educator, I'm a homeschool dad. But how do I take these things that are near and dear to my heart, these tabletop games, and blend them together so kids are excited about learning,
Yeah.
because I was dragging my kids to like worksheet, and I found that with those short like homebrewed DM games where we were doing like a modification of Fandelver and Below, or some other D&D game, that I could like sprinkle stuff in a little bit, like, oh yeah, like what's the difference between ice and water? If you know it, you get a boon, stuff like that. And then I read your book and was like these people are doing it. So I love that.
Yeah. Oh, we're obsessed with it. Yeah. I just think about TTRPGs all day, every day. It's one of my favorite things in the world. And you're right. I mean, it is sort of odd actually that so much of teaching and learning these days is devoid of narrative and devoid of like this is such a fundamental way in which we understand and interact with the world is through identity and storytelling and different how different people like kind of the social intelligence, which I think is really connected with role play and so forth. So that yeah, and people have been doing this for a long time, by the way. It's not like any of us came up with this. It's been going on in different formats. But I think it's interesting right now in how it's starting to create, it's starting to become a little bit more mainstream and not maybe mainstream, but it's starting to seep into more of the conversation. And it's just a
Yes.
great moment. So yeah, and therapists, of course, as you know, they're probably 10 years ahead of educators in terms of
Right.
using applied role play games and stuff. So
100%. 100%. Yeah, I think using these as like a technological tool rather than just a fun game. I also loved the game-based education versus like gamification aspect that y'all
yeah,
took. That's so important. Especially I work a lot with kids with neurodivergence, ADHD, autism. And yeah, they can smell that stuff a mile away.
yeah.
Like let's talk about this TTRPG about, like math. And they're like, no. I mean, it's better than the alternative. Let's read it. Let's read the textbook, but
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, and the issue, I mean, people think gamification, oh, it's let's just roll it out. It's easy to do. And nothing could be further from the truth, right? Like
right.
shallow gamification is sort of insulting. And right,
Yeah,
kids can kind of whiff it.
exactly. Yeah.
They had this phrase for it in when I was more in my entry point here was video games and learning. And I mean, I've
Yeah.
been playing D&D since 7th grade, and it was a big reason I just got into college. I think it did well there,
I love it.
but it wasn't until I started
Yeah, it's
teaching
not
um, and working on my master's work that I ran into this course on video games and learning, where I started really thinking this stuff must work for role play. Where does it cross over? Where is it and where does it not? The literature on video games and learning and kind of more analog tabletop role playing games and learning. And
yeah.
so you might see that in the book. Like a lot of our references are importing and trying to make an argument that these things apply. How do they apply? When do they don't apply? But there was this phrase that the video games and learning people use called the creepy treehouse effect. And the
Mm.
creepy treehouse effect is this idea that, oh, the adults built this space and they built it to kind of like lure kids
Mhm.
in. And it's like
Interesting.
it's like what adults think fun should be, right?
Yeah.
Versus what kids are actually doing in their own, like how they would actually build it and design it, which is different. And yeah, that's what tabletop good, player empowered, where they actually have some agency to shape what's going on in the story. Uh, Good games really take on a very different shape, especially with younger kids. How old are your kids?
I have a 9-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 6-month-old.
Oh
So,
wow! Congrats, a
yes,
6 month
thank
old.
you.
That's
Yeah,
tremendous.
she's lovely. She's lovely. So we homeschooled for 2 years and just loved it. Loved it. Loved the opportunity to spend more time with the kids. And then this of course came out. Like how do we take these things and make them available to kids? But also like testing is so hard. And when you put a kid in front of a test and say, "Hey, regurgitate information," they're kind of applying it, but I know I personally had a hard time with testing. And like taking testing and turning it on its head is what I'm hoping that we really accomplish with tabletop teaching. And what we're doing is like, hey, this is something we've said has to happen this way, fill in the bubble. But if a kid can go through a tabletop game where they're just having a good time, but we're bleeding and learning objectives as we go, and all they do is say yes or no, and we have a fixed space repetition algorithm that tracks what they know, like over time they can demonstrate, hey, I knew these things. Someone taught them to me. I demonstrated that I could apply them in the game, and we're not taking like more than 3 minutes of divergence from the game in order to demonstrate because we're trying to blend them in where they apply.
Of course, yeah, authentic assessments, right?
Yeah,
And so are they demonstrating them? Are they showing it through doing like artifacts, like present, like
sometimes.
in fiction letters or activities or recording speech? How are you kind of capturing that assess, or is it sort of just observation?
Yes, so the iterations that run through are different levels that we take the learning objectives. The parent can upload all of them, whether it's like, hey, I live in Colorado, and these are the learning objectives that the state of Colorado says that I have to do for homeschool. They download those. We have a parser that breaks the learning objectives into micro encounters or micro pieces and says like, hey, what is the fundamental piece of knowledge that they need to be able to demonstrate? And then when the parent is going through based on what the child has already done, either through like hearing about it in school or a syllabus, or they unfreeze those learning objectives. It then develops a small database that says, hey, here are all the things that we allegedly think the child knows, and that's tied to the learner. And then it pulls and says, okay, based on the transcript that I'm hearing you guys talk about and the world, I have a very light backend world framework that they can upload or like download from a different source. All it's doing is playing a matching game. So I'm pulling keywords from the learning objectives and then inserting it into either in the form of question answers where an adult, what I'm calling the Gibby, the game-based educator. I know there's been different iterations too. I've watched some of like what you guys have posted, but like the game-based educator then says, okay, like, do I want to ask this or not? And if I ask it, then it has an answer below. So the game-based educator doesn't have to know the right answer. And they can simply say, uh, yes, no, or hard. And if the child had a hard time, then it spaces it out again, depending on how well they did. But this iteration, yes, no's, answers, like a very low level first order assessment tool, happens maybe once every 3 to 5 minutes, that it fits really nicely. And then maybe every 10 to 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how long the game is and how old the kids are. Usually like two bigger breakout sessions, like now we've come to a river, and what I want everyone to do is break out, here's pencils. I want you to draw the river. And let's say in like a fifth grade assessment, we're talking about how water may push us, and we're learning about like vectors, very easy like basic science. If you're moving this far and the river is pushing you this far, where do you guys think, like, draw a triangle, where do you think you're going to end up on the other side of the river? And then, oh, by the way, there's a snake pit down this far. How far upstream, like how much can they apply of these learning objectives?
Nice. Well, that's fun. Oh, that's so interesting. I would love to see more of that, and yeah, be a
I
part
would
of it.
love to get it in your hands. I
Yeah,
would love
yeah.
to get it in your hands. I've,
And
I've been
so,
meaning to send you guys emails.
yeah, no, let's do it. And you said transcripts. So is it sort of your upload, record like transcripts from recordings from the game, or is it listening live?
Yeah, so it runs a whisper. It runs a whisper note online in the web-based app. It's FERPA and COPPA, so we're really careful about the content and it's not storing these. It's just transcribing them and creating that transcript in the back, that we're chunking it then and using RAG to pull the learning objective, or I guess the keywords out, and then checking those keywords against the two different databases.
It'd be interesting. This is yeah, I would love to see, do some research with this and kind of see what happens. One of my pet projects, and I'm restarting, I put my doctoral program on pause after we had our last kid, who's now
Oh,
about to start
congrats.
daycare. Yeah, he's
Oh,
19 months, 20 months. So
yeah.
he's getting up
Oh,
there, and he has a big brother who's in pre-K. So they're starting to get thick as thieves, those boys. But
oh,
but it gives me a little more wiggle room to restart the doctoral program. But one of the things I'm really keen on is there's been so much established literature on TTRPGs and socio-emotional learning.
yeah.
And so that's really well established, actually, and pretty foundational too. Like there's sort of this almost this like culture war about like Cell is kind of like on the periphery or kind of like a nice act, but it's like no, Cell is like foundational to being successful in like navigating human like emotions and conflict and executive.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I'm interested in like research literacy, information literacy, and how TTRPGs promote kind of like fundamental academic skills besides Cell. Like, by playing these games, how does it improve your vocabulary over time? How does it improve your ability to parse dense texts or read visual, read maps as it is, or have a kind of visual aesthetic or visual literacy. So
Interesting.
So even just doing like more open research about like recording these sessions with younger players over time and seeing how the language changes, rather than even, so this is in more like kind of casual recreational environments versus structured learning environments. I'd be very fascinated. I mean, this is sort of what I would think of as sort of a dissertation, was sort of like doing that kind of work. But
I love that.
yeah.
I
No,
love that.
anyway, what you're doing sounds really, really interesting and important too. So, what we can do to help kind of help some of that work. I'd love to connect further. I wanted to share a little on this. Are you familiar at all with Polymorph and this little system?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, by the way, what are
Yes.
you guys playing? Like, what kind of, is it open to kind of any? It sounds like kind of basically you could use it about any system.
The goal is any system up front, but I actually also have a few ideas in mind of like an actual K through 12 curriculum with a whole arc and a backstory. That's like a spoiler, like for later. But right now, any TTRPG, most of what we do with my kids is Wizards of the Coast, D&D 5e based,
Okay.
and then we've done a little bit with Hero Kids TTRPG, like the simple 3D6.
Yep. So you're 9-year-old, and did you say a 5-year-old?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
5-year-old.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It's definitely like rules light for her, like I just roll the dice and tell me what the number is. But yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is, and our current project on BackerKit, we have the teaser page for Adventures in the Stacks, which is all about, which we're launching this October. I don't know if you're
Ooh, no, I've not seen it.
So this is what we're working on currently. And this is our book really focused on libraries. And so the stacks, right? Modules, programs, and resources for literacy-enriched TTRPGs. And so we're working with a bunch of librarians. It's kind of blowing up. TTRPGs are kind of blowing up at libraries, and there's some folks doing research on it. How do we help support more librarians adopting this and scaling their programs? Because there's often more demand than they have supply. But they're tough programs to actually run and facilitate. Like, it's not like a video game you can, plug into a bunch of devices and just scale out. Everybody wants to play, Halo or Mario Kart, or even a board game where you can pull out of the, everybody wants to play Monopoly. It's not quite that. We need facilitators, or people, maybe kids or community volunteers. Anyway, so we address some of these things, and we also are preparing some modules that have some hardwired information literacy stuff kind of baked in. What's fun about designing these modules are one of the things that's interesting is we know that they're going to be run in a library or for students who may be visiting a library soon. So unlike traditional modules where it's like, there's always this, you're just at a table, right? Or they work anywhere. You don't really, they're not really, you don't really have to go and navigate physical space. But the modules we're building for this invite players to go explore parts of the library. So there might be like, scavenger hunt, learning how to go and find, or talk to a librarian. Like, somebody might be in on the game, kind of more like an immersive experience.
Yeah.
And so it just gets students sort of, the goal is like, help develop a love of books and libraries and literacy. And so one of the modules is like, they go around and they're finding like characters from classic books like Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan, and they end up kind of finding this character who's going around scrambling all these narratives. They need to kind of sort that out. And so anyway, it's and then we're doing some other games which are more like big group games, which is also like a challenge with any kind of classroom TTRPG, where these are so built for, often built classic TTRPGs are built for like, a group of 4, 5, 6 players and a facilitator, which can be tough in a classroom environment when you're the only teacher. So how do you solve that problem other than doing station rotation and taking turns,
Mhm.
or slowly helping your students become GMs themselves, which are
Right.
valid approaches. But there's also the approach of GM-less games, which is interesting, although they just never quite. It's a different beast, you know.
Yeah.
Or large group role play games, which are their own category and genre. And so one of the large group games we built for this is the Library of Alexandria, and so it's teams of 4 or 5 students that represent these ancient city states in the Mediterranean. And they're all
Hmm.
competing to like copy books and catalog books until one of them becomes
Hmm.
dominant and eventually burns down and loses all the books. So it's sort of this like, sort of this like, tricky learning game. But yeah, we're having fun with it. We're working with some great librarians. So the reason I brought it up was polymorph, and so this is why we're playing so much polymorph in the Discord channel, because um, polymorph, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's like the most simple system. Like basically there's each class just rolls 1 die. So you might be the D4 class, or
Hmm.
you pick the D6 class. And the D4 is kind of like your magic user, and the D6 is kind of like your rogue, and then it goes up to D8 or D10. And
Hmm.
that's the only die you ever roll. And so you can just pick it up in a second. There's no math. So when you've got these drop-in students who come and go, which is what happens in library games,
Right.
you don't
Yeah.
have to spend all
West
this time.
Marches. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, precisely. And so it's super easy to run as a facilitator and super easy to pick up as a player. So, and the group behind it, Ninth Level Games, is just incredible. And so they have a free license for the
Oh,
game,
okay.
and then they have a paid license. And so our hope is to release this. We want to hit our funding goal and then release this book into the Creative Commons. But we're doing a number of we're doing a library focused polymorph system. And so students get a chance to play like an investigator, a journalist, an archaeologist, some sort of like real world profession that is rooted in information literacy, research literacy. And
Oh, wow.
so we're building our own little polymorph system. So it's a way of me kind of like playing with it and also doing a little hype. But I love it. I found, it's so rules light, but it's so narrative forward that, and there's trade-offs there in terms of learning, right? The crunchiness of systems like fifth edition and others is where a lot of that learning happens, when they have to read the textbooks and they have to do the, they're
Right.
thinking about all these. But we need an entry point, and we need to be able to make it easier to run these programs and so forth. So,
Right. I mean, heavily dependent on the age of the kids, like if
that
it's
too.
if it's targeting a teen, like something that's not crunchy enough, sometimes it's just not fun, like I wondered
Yeah.
too, like uh if there's any sort of like a regression analysis on like age and an appropriateness of like a sliding scale for games, like this is kind of where their age is and how like how developed their frontal lobe is and what sort of expectations we would see to push them a little bit to, I don't know. But it very interesting. I've not played the game,
Oh, it's fun.
Polymorph.
Yeah, it's so lighthearted and casual. I mean, we ran this game last Wednesday. We had some people from the community, and this was the map. So I was going to share this and talk about how I built this guy. I'm going to make this a little more big for people. So this is just, I used Claude, and it's an HTML page.
I
And
love
so
that.
this was sort of a primer that I gave players to think about the world and the setting. And I took screenshots of Google Maps of a couple of different locations, and then
Mhm.
researched real world location. I'm from Northern Michigan. This is Petoskey, up in the tip
Oh,
of the
okay.
mid. And so there's like, these different tabs. But it was a way, and the first point is like choose where your treehouse is, right? So you're from Petoskey, and the Druid Scouts, of course, is Nancy Druid. They're detective
I
Druid
love that.
Scouts, and
Oh man,
and so
gumshoes.
yes. And it's funny because as almost a 40-year-old man, I've been carrying around this book like a Mormon, like not like just like, have you heard about polymorph? Like, look at that. Like I
That's
can't put
so funny.
it's the perfect pocket-sized little book.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love one of the things I love about playing D&D is that moment of daydreaming about an upcoming game and thinking about the world and thinking about the character creation. So I always love giving my players just a pack of like, use it if you want. You don't have to go through all of it, but it fits into this theory actually called like projective worlds. And so this is a chapter in our book. It's on page like 187 if you're into that. But this is from a academic article written by Laura De Aveda, who's actually a co-author on our next book. And so she wrote this article called Projective Worlds, and she did some kind of an analysis of some different games that have projective spaces. And she's building on the work of Jim Paul G and projective identity. But she talks about how maps in particular help create this world. And of course, this is true, that single page in Tolkien, if you're a Tolkien nerd, that of Middle-earth has gotten so much play, and it just created this huge expansive world. People have tattoos, it's on millions of basement walls, and so this is how we understand the Shire and Mordor and all this stuff. And so I'd argue these are things that we gravitate to when we read these books and flip through a lot of classic TTRPGs like Greyhawk and Faerun and so forth. So they act as literacy anchors. When students are struggling to get into more complex text, when they might not be interested, it's the art and often these maps that give them a way to help navigate it. Right? Okay, let me look at the key, the legend of the map, and let me look at these spaces, and especially when in TTRPGs, of course, when they can have agency in shaping that world. And this is what De Aveda really gets into. Like, this is what's really powerful in games like Minecraft and other spaces. And so what I wanted to do was play around with using an LLM to code this little map. And this is not as interactive. I think if I were to spend more time with this, I would have it like, hey, choose where your treehouse goes. Have a couple sites, and then it might zoom in. And what we did when we played on Wednesday was the first 30, 40 minutes are all like character introduction. And so I'm kind of like, what are your Girl Scout, like, what are you guys up to this summer? What do they want to do? What are some of their badges? And one of them wanted to have a skating rink. And so that's not in the map of Petoskey I have, but it's something that I added in the game. I was like, okay, well, it's over here. There's definitely a skating rink. But it'd be cool to, like, in pre or primer time, they could add a marker, right? Like, here's this space. And somebody else wanted to have like a vet or an animal shelter. And so we added that in the game. So anyway, having like a digital space, and this would be great for a course, right? And this is what I've done when I teach these. I have students use e-portfolios. And so they're, session logs and character sheets and whatever work they're doing in the fiction of the game, they upload it to their e-portfolio. And that's the argument I've been making for assessment and evaluation in formal learning environments, or using e-portfolios for these things. But yeah, so this is just an HTML. This is literally just an LLM. I'm giving images, and then I kind of like refine what I want it to look like. And I really wanted to have like, parks, because it's about Druid scouts, and I wanted to have bike trails, and ultimately I added all these lighthouses. And so there's a number of different places where the story could end up. I'm not going to spoil it, but some of these lighthouses have real ghost stories attached to them. That's all I'm going to say. And so, so that was fun. And I can share if anybody's into this, I could share the HTML file, and you could use it as a template to kind of build your own map or whatever. But a lot of these things are real. A lot of them are made up. And so, it's a fun little Easter egg for people too, with playing a game like this. It's almost like a little road trip. You get to kind of like go and check out a real space with that narrative fiction. So fun for a one shot. But I thought I'd share that and just connect it back to the book for folks.
That's amazing. I think that's got a lot of value. You see stuff like this in video games all the time, especially when there's, a giant world that you're zooming into a specific location and it generates maybe a layout of what that looks like. I think those sorts of things, huge. That the world also will continue to evolve with their engagement, like huge.
Yes, precisely. I mean, agency is just the key word. And then it had me thinking, like, how far do I want to take this in terms of creating like a little browser game? I don't know your age, but when I was growing up, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? was
Yeah.
a great game. And I was like, what did that interface look? I remember just loving it. And it had a cell phone. I don't know if you can see my page, but and you had like a notepad, and you'd
Yeah.
go to these scenes and like talk to people and collect evidence. And for some reason, my mind was just going there with like coming up with like a newsstand or a rack of books that your character, like rumors around the town or what's going on that they could, sort through and read through before the game starts. So all of this is like extra. And for adults, like when we're committed to playing a TTRPG, it's like, why build all this stuff? Well, you don't need this stuff, right? But for learners who aren't engaged with a learning environment, they're not motivated, they're not interested in books or literacy or schooling. These sort of things can really help become those gateways into participating. So.
Yeah.
And you probably get, I mean, that probably resonates with you as a homeschooler. Like, yeah, some of these, it's just hard sometimes seeing kids struggle, especially in some formal spaces. That this is my mission, right? Go out there and make learning a little more fun and interactive. So, TTRPGs are the thing in my mind.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, I 100% agree. I think too, like they completely underutilized. Like I see some stuff that when they're used in classrooms, everything like it makes a huge difference. I know it has for me.
Well, thank you for stopping in. I'm gonna stop sharing and yeah. It's great to meet you. It's Tellen.
Teelan.
Tellen.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to meet you. I hope we can connect again. And maybe some way down the road you could come on Fellowship Friday and tell us more about what you guys are building with your startup. It sounds really, really fascinating.
I would love to. Thank you for that invite. I will. I'll keep maybe a communication open via LinkedIn, or if you'd like, I can give you my email address. But as soon as we're up for alphas, I'll also give you access, and you can play around with it. My hope, my goal is that eventually this to perhaps in line with what your research is, like some way to let me use these words carefully, like help teachers prove to their administration that they are credentialed and have the tools necessary to run these in their classrooms. That they can have the full support of the tech to help them make sure that they're implementing these things, that they can have easy to make reports to prove that they're like covering mandatory learning objective requirements. And then at the end of the day, like my kids had the STAR test, but gosh, I am 100% of the belief that this will make like kids remember things better when they can take concepts and apply them in game, like their memory, long term, short term, like they'll be able to apply it on tests. I think both in the short and the long run.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and that was their findings with video games and learning, was when
Yeah.
you taught the test, when you taught the concept sort of isolated from any rich context, you would get test performance sometimes, but they would have a much harder time actually applying it in the real world.
Yeah.
But when you taught with games, you got both test achievement and real world application. So
Love that.
we're catching up.
Yeah.
The work you're doing is part of that. So fantastic.
Thank
Well,
you.
let's wrap it up here. Yeah. Thank you for coming, and everybody else out there, maybe watching the recording. This is all powered by you guys. This is, we don't have any external big donors or anything. This is all funded by crowdfunding and volunteers. So thank you guys for supporting Adventures in Teaching Learning with TTRPGs and Tabletop EDU, and buying the book and the course and just participating in the community. And thanks for running TTRPGs. Like, it matters to people, and it creates a lot of community just casually. It means a lot to a lot of people. So even if it's just like volunteering to run something at your school or library, that's powerful and that's meaningful. So do that, and we want to hear how it goes. So join us in the Discord, shoot us an email, and we will see you guys next Friday.
Take care.